Welcome to Job Sharing and Beyond, the Future of Work podcast that goes beyond the traditional 9 to 5. I am Karen Tischler, speaker, consultant, and host of the show, where we hear from global experts every other week to discover innovative solutions and tips on how to remain a relevant employer in the future. I am very delighted to introduce my guest today. Tiina Bruno is a Swedish economist, management consultant, author, and international lecturer with over 20 years of work experience. She's often referred to as a norm breaker and change maker for her way of daring to explore what companies and organizations actually mean with promises around inclusion, sustainable work life, and work-life balance. Her pioneer initiatives challenge and develop traditional patterns in working life, promoting more concrete action to increase inclusion and social sustainability for all. After research and launch of the Parentsmart Company's Handbook in 2010, her perspective on the topic of working parents has received a lot of attention both in Sweden and abroad, mainly for using parenthood as a universal inclusion example relevant in all countries with impact and benefits for all, not only parents. Tiina has been invited to international conferences and arranges study visits to Swedish companies in cooperation with UN agencies and embassies as an expert in the area and with a strong belief in international exchange of experience. The Parentsmart train-the-trainer model for global companies promotes the spread of best practice for all countries to develop faster and learn from each other. It shows employers' potential impact to reach several Agenda 2030 goals. Welcome to the show, Tiina. Our listeners have just heard your professional background. Would you like to add something to the bio?
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for inviting me here. You know what? Actually, when I introduce myself, I always start with saying that I'm a mother of three. That is always on top of my CV too. I'm a mother of three. My children are now 15, 17, and 19. So that's what I would like to add. Thank you.
As we have many listeners from all over the world, I always ask my guests, where are you calling in from and what is your favorite food or site in the area you are at the moment?
I'm calling in from Täby outside Stockholm, from my home office here right now. And favorite food here in Sweden, we eat a lot of fish, herring and crayfish, since we are very close to the water everywhere in the archipelago here.
That sounds really good. So, Tiina, at the leading Change International Women's Day event this year, you were asked to share your own entrepreneurial story that started many years ago. You said, and it all started with two simple questions. Could you tell us more about this?
Yes, Karen. The two questions were actually the start of everything around 2008 when I was working with the development of so-called modern leadership and the skills needed in successful companies. I started thinking, also mother of three as I am, of all the skills developed when you become a parent and how we among those skills actually have exactly the keys for the leadership needed. But why don't we talk more about this? So the question that popped up was, I wanted to get more examples of this connection. And the second question was why employers and companies don't talk about this and think about it. Since many companies, like here in Sweden, call themselves parent-friendly, giving a lot of support connected to time and money and routines and so on. But not many talked about what they get back for this investment, the wins. So I wanted to try a new word, and I actually sent them the shortest email I ever sent to the CEO of one of the largest Swedish global company, I could say, and asked him just in subject in the email I wrote, "Are you a Parentsmart or only parent-friendly company?" And I got the immediate answer back. What is Parentsmart? Is it something that we could be? Everybody, so many are parent-friendly now. Can we do more? And I realized that there is a need to do more in many ways. So that was the start.
That sounds awesome. Now, you have written the Swedish book Parentsmart in 2010. And now, can you share more? Because you just mentioned Parentsmart. So, can you tell us what this book entails?
Well, about those two questions, the first one, I sent 100 emails to managers with kids to ask them about one concrete example of parental skill that is useful in their leadership at work. And I got 80 amazing stories back in less than a week. I mean, I never got such a response on a survey. And since I truly believe in storytelling and real examples from everyday life, I decided to share those stories. And an editor became interested and asked me to write a book about the idea, and also with a model for companies, employers, to get wins from this insight that parenthood may be an asset and not only a cost and burden at work. So this book is actually, lots of stories. I remember the editor said that you can have maximum 5 quotes in a book, and I wanted to have 50. So I divided all those stories into 12 competence areas and presented 2 quotes, 2 stories for each competence. And there are actually 69 competencies described. And then a model for how I then thought that companies could work with this within HR and communication and leadership. But this was more than 10 years ago. So, we need to revise the model since now I've been developing it further during the 10 years. So it's in Swedish, and many countries I've been to now would like to have it in their local language, like Russian and Japanese and so on. English, of course, but I just haven't had time yet, but it's coming. Yeah.
I really look forward to reading it in English because, my Swedish, unfortunately, is non-existent. Now, as you mentioned employers, so there are 3 levels of Parentsmart employers in your program. Can you share the differences with our audience?
Yes. First, we have the companies and employers. And when I say employers, I mean both private sector and public sector employers and organizations. That is important. At the first level, we have those that do what they must do according to local legislation and law, the support they need to give their working parents and families. But they're curious about what they can do more. And the second level are those companies that are, friendly. They give a lot of support, maybe practical support connecting to paid parental leave or remote working and other things that is often a cost for the company. But they don't highlight so much the wins with it, what they get back. So they are curious about how to put this Parentsmart angle to the things they do. And the third level that I call the Parentsmart role models are the companies and organizations that maybe not always consciously, but have the norms and culture where parenting is seen as an asset among other competences developed outside work. And they use this idea of Parentsmart development as one example of inclusion and how to make use of all resources available. This is a sustainability issue,
Right.
the resource developed outside work. So they use this group since there are, well, very often like 80% of employees in a company are parents, but not all. So I want to say from the beginning, very early here, that this is nothing discriminating non-parents. It's just a very large group in many companies. So it's possible to use it to develop support and routines and attitudes that will benefit all. And those role model companies at the level of, the last level I talk about, they are also the ones that communicate it externally and get values back in employer branding and so on. So they spread it in different ways.
Now, Tiina, some of our listeners are from all over the world, and they might be thinking, well, you are in Sweden and it is a very progressive country. In our country, something like a Parentsmart simply wouldn't work. Now, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, and since I've been to many countries which are very far from the history and the circumstances here in Sweden, I always tell them that start with the things that are possible to do and talk about everywhere. The universal fact that too about the skills that develop in parenting and that are useful in work. I mean, parenting skills are useful at work in all countries, no matter culture, religion, or business, or gender or role in the company. And it's nothing that could be mentioned as utopia and only possible in Sweden and the Nordic countries with our history and legislation here. So if starting out in this point, it is a way of motivating why we should invest in the costly practical support we want to give parents. And in that way, getting commitment and engagement among managers for the investments. So start with a common denominator, parented value at work. That is my advice.
Tiina, could you tell our listeners why it is so important that the governmental national policies work hand in hand with local employers?
Well, actually, it's not only important, it's crucial that governments have the same goal as employers, or the other way around, actually, because now we see that very many countries, governments start supporting families in different ways, everything from economic support during parental leave to support when they are home with sick children and so on. But if the situation is such that if you're a father and take paternity leave and get fired when you do it, which is actually the case, I've seen that in some countries, then this government support is not worth it. I mean, then it will not have the impact intended. So that's why employers and governments really need to have the same vision and goals with increasing the more equal share in parental leave and care for children and the working parent life.
I very much appreciate that. Now, you have been called a norm shifter frequently, and you also said that you are a stubborn entrepreneur and you did not give up your mission easily. So I'm curious to learn more about that.
Well, I think it was because I was early out with this. I mean, in the more than a decade ago, 2008, with a mindset about parenting being an asset and not a cost and burden at work, which was a new way of looking at it and talking about it also here in Sweden. So I got to hear from my companies here too that is great and very motivating, interesting, but you're a bit before your time, Tiina. uh, and I just was so convinced about the impact it gives when you talk about it in this way, because I had seen it in the eyes and the feeling among managers and parents who had posed those questions too, those two questions. And so then the years went by, and a lot of things have happened since then. But I think I'm just a very strong visionary person. So I was actually in my mind where we are today, where I get to hear that now this is right on time, and it's 100% in focus in many companies and families. Actually, Karen, during the pandemic right now, I mean, never before has the combination of work and family been so much in focus in so many companies and families and countries all over the world at the same time as now. And that is, of course, a huge challenge for so many. But some talk about benefits and advantages. And then they often mention like more time spent with your children, and you don't need to transport to work and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about learnings, these are much about the digital development, the maturity in remote working and so on. But not many talk about the learnings that are made possible by this digital maturity, that the leadership development going on in so many families right now. So what if employers would start to be curious about this? I think then the topic should be really high on agendas right now, because it motivates parents working and struggling at home right now.
You have mentioned in your talks and webinar the desire to measure the ROI, as you call it, the return on inclusion. And you spend a month researching many large, well-known companies about this. So what did you find out?
This is actually one of the most important parts for many employers, many companies, both the commercial ones and non-profit. And it has also been the hardest part for me during my 10 years, 12 years of work with this, since so many companies ask me for economic proof.
Mm-hmm.
And cost benefit analysis. How much do we earn if we do this? How can we prove it before we start doing something? And I understand that question, and I respect it fully. As an economist, I am myself too. I have spent lots of time during these years figuring out how to follow up and measure the impact, also in figures. So together with the researchers and professors in economy and HR here in Sweden, we'll try to look at the KPIs possible to follow and maybe develop a Parentsmart company index, so on. But it is not easy, since companies also need to do lots of stuff before we can measure. So a couple of years ago, yes, we did a month of research almost globally, boiled the ocean and looked at all the companies that support paid parental leave to their employees. I mean, that's a huge investment,
Right.
that was really coming up there a couple of years ago. So we wanted to see how they made their strategic decisions about this. And the interesting thing was that we found out that actually none of those companies can prove, of course, in their business cases what this could give us. Everything is assumptions, since, like in most HR employer branding issues, topics, of course, it's not always possible to show what leads to what. But what they had done was to make assumptions connected to, for example, increased attraction as an employer. We would get easier to attract and retain talent, and that could lead to lower recruitment costs, of course. We increase health in the company, especially among parents with small children, which could lead to lower sick leave costs. We get increased gender equality in the company, maybe more women in management positions, as many companies have as a KPI they want to follow up. And also matters connecting to innovation, productivity, competence development, as I talked about. So the thing was that we realized that they made the investments even though they couldn't prove what they would win in economic figures. And that in itself, I think, is maybe the strongest proof of all.
Right.
That they use this as one example of how to be an inclusive employer, and really believing in that it will give us something back, made them do these investments. They wouldn't otherwise. So either companies do it now and are pioneers and get all the wins with that, or they wait a couple of years until these pioneer companies have shown their good figures about it. So.
This is so interesting. Now, you have worked with organizations regarding working parents for a long time. Now, you mentioned earlier COVID. So, what would you feel has changed over the last 10 years or so towards the attitude regarding working parents?
Very much has actually changed. And it has to do with the fact that companies and employers have realized that the matter of culture and company values and attitudes actually can have a direct connection to business impact in different ways, up and down. Like the Me Too movement, for example, raised the awareness of this. So, I mean, I've been doing this for many years now, and I've been connecting it to the buzzwords where in time, I mean, gender equality from the beginning, of course, but then people started talking about diversity, inclusion, and now it's social sustainability and so on. I mean, it's about all of that, but most of all, it's about an inner shift. I mean, an inner change, a mind shift, which actually is exactly the kind of leadership we need right now. During the COVID now, people talk about the new leadership needed. But what if it's more about finding new ways of accessing the leadership skills many already have, like if you're a parent? So things have changed, and now I perceive an openness in both companies and the leaders, managers, to talk about those things without it being too fluffy, and soft and not connected to business values.
We first met a year ago when I was watching you on a panel discussion called Parental Leave Smart Companies Taking a Stand, hosted by Empower Women, which is supported by UN Women. And I was so fascinated by your Parentsmart Employers methodology that I reached out to you via LinkedIn. And I'm so appreciative that you are my guest today. Could you tell our listeners more about the work that you have done with the UN and about your latest project?
Yes, absolutely. By the time there, I did webinars for UN Women and also blogged for them and so on. And actually, a lot started with a global tour that I was part of, arranged by the Swedish Institute, the Swedish Foreign Ministry, in collaboration with Swedish embassies around the world, where I got the opportunity to go to different countries with an expo called Life Puzzle, the combination of work and family. And this expo was telling the information about the development in Sweden of gender equality and support to parental insurance system in Sweden and so on, but also how companies can work with this. So during this tour, I came to countries like from Poland to Japan and Russia, and got the opportunity to meet companies and managers in so various cultures, and could understand how to talk about those matters in different circumstances, different cultures, both different societies and company cultures that differ a lot. So that tour ended up in Belarus, and I also went to Estonia. Yeah, and my parents are from Estonia, so I think it was great to come there too. I'm born in Sweden, but anyway, I came to Belarus, and there I met another UN organization called UNFPA that have been working with gender equality issues for decades, and they also have the platform Men Engage. And they wanted to continue the work with me, and we did a project called Parentsmart Employers to identify and develop role models in that country. But it was preceded with many years of, I think I went there 4 or 5 times for awareness raising and to build curiosity, both among companies and trade unions, politicians, about the wins with supporting working parents. And then we had a study visit tour here to Sweden, and 8 Belarusian companies came here to visit 5 Swedish employers, different sorts. And they also, to hear what they do, why they support working parents and how they do it. And they also came here to our garden, actually, here in Täby. We had, we invited them to our home, meeting my husband, who has taken 3 paternity leaves, and our neighbors and friends here in the garden, to really pose those questions, that they wanted to pose. I mean, how come you took paternity leave when you're CEO of a company? How was that possible? And why did you do that? And how did you manage to be manager with 3 small kids? So interesting talks here on our veranda that evening. And then they went back and decided to try something, small steps. And we followed up with the Swedish embassy too. And now we have a training going on there about how to do an internal program during parental leave. We focus a Parentsmart program. We focus on the competence developed at home. So that's very exciting, and I think that is a way to do it. We need to develop role models locally, because Swedish, as I normally say, Swedish examples can inspire, but only local examples can change local attitudes. That is so important. So during that project, I met their colleagues at the regional office in Istanbul, in Turkey, for Balkan and Eastern Europe. And they had another project going on, and asked if I wanted to be part of that, with support from the Austrian government, ADA. So this is a project I work with now too. We have been almost at the end of the first year, 3-year pilot project, where we develop a concept called family-friendly workplaces. The project name is Expanding Choices. And the goal with this project is to actually the same thing, to identify companies who want to develop as role models, champion companies, inspiring others in their country. So in 3 countries, it's Moldova, Kosovo, and Albania. Companies will get support from local consultants that we will train and give support and material and so too. And after 3 years, it's a What Works package and role model companies that can spread the initiatives further. So that's very exciting, and I love to be part of this project. It's important. Together with my team of experts here in Sweden, the Parentsmart team, we work with developing those pilot companies with a concept, but the UNFPA project in those 3 countries also work lots with government development, and we have given support there too about how to support working parents and families in different ways, with inspiration from couple of countries, and what needs to be in place for family-friendly workplaces to be able to develop, and how the collaboration, as I talked about earlier, between government and private sector is crucial for the development and change to happen.
This is so fascinating, Tiina. Thank you so much for sharing all these interesting details. Now, you mentioned that your husband took paternity leave, and that brings me to my next question. And I watched your interview with Daddy Joe, an American dad in Sweden who was taking paternal leave at the time. And I highly recommend this video to any one of my listeners. And I will put the links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Now, what I loved was that you cheekily recommended to him to ask for a raise in pay on day 2 of his return. Can you tell our audience more about that?
Yeah, oh Joe, that was a very great talk with him. He was taking paternity leave from, he was working at Google with YouTube here in Stockholm, and married to a Swedish woman. He actually, maybe day 1 you could say it.
Okay, day
but
1.
what I referred to was that many employers welcome back their parents after parental leave by booking meetings so they could hear everything that has happened and developed while they were away, at home on leave. And what if a parent, like a father like Joe, instead would come back and tell his story, or even better, if the employer would ask about how he has developed while they were only working at the company. I mean, he could give examples of how he has become more organized and flexible and creative and efficient at the same time, and sometimes with very little sleep, and how he deserves a salary raise for this huge management course, actually one of the best you can get.
Right.
So, I mean, that kind of self-confidence he would go back with. Of course, it would be maybe hard negotiations for the company with this salary question, but this is actually exactly the kind of self-confidence that companies would like their parents to come back with after a leave. So I think it would make a huge difference.
And you also suggested to him to meet up with other parents during his parental leave to focus on a particular transferable business skill that they all had learned, and to share their learning experience with each other. And then you suggested that in an ideal case, it would be with the support of an employer. And now in December 2019, Microsoft Sweden opened its door for a workshop that included people on parental leave, including their children. So could you tell me a bit more about that event and what has happened since?
Yeah. Well, actually, this idea of meeting and discussing this competence developed is, I believe that, programs for parents on leave sometimes have a lot of topics that they need to learn new things. But I would like, with this Parentsmart type of program, it's about acknowledging the development in the course, the best course that you already go at home. You don't need to learn something new. So an internal program during parental leave is actually one of the most powerful ways to raise awareness that will lead to important norm shifts and change in mindset, both among employees and managers. And it's rather easy to set up and try. So, well, Microsoft Sweden, they wanted to put the lens on working parents as one of many ways to be an inclusive employer. So they wanted to use this group as a concrete example to develop attitudes and support and routines that benefit all, not only parents. Like routines for remote working or work-life balance in other ways is relevant for all. So the meeting for employees on parental leave was one of three parts in a Parentsmart pilot project to understand how far the Swedish Microsoft Office has come according to HR, according to a group of managers and a group of parents on leave, and what they thought is most important forward. So we involved people in dialogues to highlight the wins in combining parenthood with work and the awareness of the return on investment and return on inclusion, the ROI, as we like to call it, and discussed everything from wins in valuable competence developed to business wins like increased attraction, gender equality, innovation, sustainability, etc. And we connected it to the company vision and values. And that is so important, that this is not a separate project, or it's something that really connects to the overall vision of the company. So we identified what is offered today when it comes to what we call formal support. A formal support is the practical matters connected to time, to money, IT, and routines. And we also discovered what they had in the important informal support. And that is more about developing attitudes, culture, norms, and leadership, how their leaders meet and talk with parents on leave and working parents and so on. And that is actually the key, role models knowing and showing the wins. So this pilot was just before the pandemic last year. So we have not yet seen consequences of it or even decided about next steps to take. But it was very interesting, and we had great findings and the talks with managers and parents.
You had mentioned that it's towards working parents. I also saw that you had said before that Parentsmart's methodology covers the whole life from parental leave to becoming a grandparent. And so for listeners who might have working grandparents on their staff, do you have any insights from this pilot or your experience in general over many years regarding this?
It's for grandparents as for all. If just taking some time to reflect about the skills trained when spending time with grandchildren, there will be also very clear connections to leadership in this time, the development. And by the way, I mean, grandparents' time with their grown-up children too develop skills as well. I mean, like my mother with me and so on. It's I would say it's a lifelong management course from pregnancy to grandparenting. Okay. Yeah. And the most important is actually in the discussions with the managers at Microsoft, we discussed these matters, and some of them showed a mindset that may change the attitudes they have both towards themselves and their parenthood if they have children, and towards employed parents. Because one of them, I have a quote I can tell you from one of the managers at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. He said that after discussing all the wins and so on, he said that, well, parenting actually enriches experiences and clearly facilitates customer and partner relationships, as parenting is a natural part of life. So it's maybe it's the most natural part of life we have, but we don't often think about using it at work.
Yes. Now, your model sounds like such an amazing model for companies to use worldwide. Now, could you share how you're planning to expand it further worldwide? I saw you were talking about a digital platform and train the trainer model. And I also would love to learn more about, you had mentioned it also earlier in our conversation, like a new standard.
Well, you know, when I started this many years ago, I still have the same vision and dream. Well, you know, what I envision in my mind when I started this was actually a world map where companies and managers and parents and other employees can share their stories and exchange experience with each other and unite in this development towards a more inclusive and sustainable society, as we all need. And for that to happen, we do train the trainer classes for global companies, local offices in different countries, with trainings for local consultants who can support them. And we are looking at ways to do this even more efficiently online, of course. So, well, I think that if we just find a great way to scale up this idea in the ways that we are planning now, we could start a movement. And that is what I've been wanting all the time. I mean, since this is a universal fact,
Right.
all those stories gathered could really create a huge movement. And the standard project you mentioned, it was actually I mean, already 2 years ago, this issue seemed to be very much higher on agendas in companies. And we did a study last year called the Parents at Work, to ask employers in Sweden what they actually do to support working parents and why they do it, the wins with it. Since
Uh-huh.
many think that Sweden has come far, but I mean, how far have we come then? Why do they do it, and exactly what? So we did a research, and also to see, we involved 240 Swedish employers in this
Wow.
survey. We also wanted to see if they were interested in uniting to exchange experience and create a new standard together for support to working parents, which has, as I believe, ISO potential too, since this is an international question, of course. So,
Right.
but this is also something that we have paused right now. This year, we'll see what happens. But what happened was that many employers just went together and wants to take a do common efforts to develop this together. And that, I think, is really needed. That's great.
You know, Tiina, I could listen to you forever, but we are coming towards the end of our conversation. And so I just wanted to make sure, is there anything else that you would like to tell our listeners that we have not talked about yet?
Well, what I would like our listeners to know is that we are constantly now identifying and describing and spreading role models among both companies, organizations, managers, employees, especially connecting to what's needed in the world right now, connecting to the SDGs, Agenda 2030, with a more sustainable work life and societies as a whole. So for this mind shift, as many call it, to happen in the world in leadership, this could be one of the keys. So I would really like those who believe that they are in a company that has this mindset, that they support working parents and work-life balance for all, in a way that could be a good example, and that with a clear reason why, or a manager with this conviction. I would love them to reach out to me and to us to spread their story, share their story. Maybe it could be part of our new book, or some film productions actually that we have going on too. So I mean, in this digital world now, also, Karen, I mean, we could have anyone on screen here and I want this to be a global issue. So yeah,
And
that I
now,
want to add.
thank you so much, Tiina. Now, how can people reach out to you?
Well, they could either connect with me in LinkedIn, me personally, to get a contact, or through our website, parentsmartemployers.com, or the Facebook page, Parentsmart Employers, where we share stories and so on. Either one of those three, or just Google it. I think maybe you put the links in below here too.
Yes.
So yeah, please do. We need more examples and do this together. Let's create a movement.
Thank you so much, Tiina. It was such a pleasure having you on the show today and hearing all your many insights and experiences from your many years of doing all this important work. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen, for you raising those issues in all your pods. This is so important, and I really love that you do it with examples from so many different countries, because we need to highlight these things everywhere and see the common denominators too. What's possible. Thank you, Karen. Good luck further.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We hope you gained valuable insights and new ideas. To keep listening to future episodes, please head over to iTunes or your favorite player and subscribe and give it a rating. We would very much appreciate a review and for you to share it on social media, so more people can start innovating in how they offer employment. Until the next time, goodbye!